They left me behind in the jungle. On the radio, my call sign was already marked Kia. But when the convoy that abandoned me fell into a trap, I was the only one who could bring them back. They wrote my name into a report before the sun rose. Not because they were cruel, not because they didn't care, but because war forces decisions, and decisions become paperwork, and paperwork becomes truth, faster than any human can correct it. My call sign was Hawk 6. My real name is Miles Keegan, reconnaissance team leader, attached to a joint patrol element moving through the Ravelin corridor, a strip of jungle and river valleys that looked quiet from satellites and killed men quietly on the ground. We were out there for a reason no one would ever put on a public briefing slide. A local engineer, Dr. Samir Kadir, had built and maintained a water control system that fed half the valley. Clinics, shelters, and a forward medical post depended on it. A hostile force calling itself the Cinder Front wanted those gates. Not to own the region, to choke it, turn water into leverage, turn life into a bargaining chip. Our mission was simple in the way a loaded weapon is simple. Extract Kadir and his family. Confirm the enemy relay site. Get out before night. The patrol was a mix of people who'd never trained together long enough to become one organism. A convoy commander, Captain Aaron Holt, had a reputation for getting things done and getting people out. That mattered. It also made him dangerous, because speed can become a habit, and habits become blind spots. With him were 2 armored trucks, a handful of infantry, and my 3-man recon element up front. My second was Tessa Wynn, sharp-eyed, stubborn, the kind of soldier who argued with you until the bullets started, and then she moved like your own hands. The third was Rafi Santos, our comms and drone specialist, quiet, brilliant, always chewing mint gum like it was the only thing keeping him human. We moved before dawn. Jungle fog hugged the road like smoke. The trees pressed in on both sides, tall and indifferent, the canopy swallowing the sky. Holt came over comms. Hawk 6, you're 500 meters ahead. Report road conditions. I scanned the route through optics. Clear for now. But this corridor feels wrong. Wrong? Holt asked. Too clean, I said. No civilians, no animals. It's like the jungle is holding its breath. Holt chuckled once. That's just you being poetic, Keegan. Keep moving. I didn't argue. You learn quickly which commanders treat instinct like a nuisance. You also learn the cost of letting them do it. We reached the extraction village by mid-morning. Clustered huts, a schoolhouse, a generator that coughed and stuttered like it hated its own job. Dr. Kadir met us with eyes that had learned to expect disappointment. They've been asking about me, he said in a low voice. Men with radios. They know my name. My stomach tightened. How? He hesitated. They said someone told them. Tessa shot me a glance. Leak. We moved Kadir's family into the rear vehicle. Children clung to their mother's clothing. The mother didn't cry. She watched all of us like she was memorizing faces for a future she wasn't sure existed. We rolled out. 2 kilometers later, the first shot hit the convoy. Not the loud crack of a rifle in open air. The heavy thud of impact against armor. A second later, an IED detonated in front of the lead truck. Controlled, shaped charge, throwing dirt and shrapnel in a cone. The convoy halted. The jungle erupted with disciplined gunfire. Cinder Front. But it wasn't a wild ambush. It was structured, interlocking fields, elevated shooters, a kill pocket designed to trap vehicles and funnel infantry into pre-sighted lanes. Contact left. Tree line, someone yelled. Holt came over comms fast. All units dismount. Establish security. I watched muzzle flashes bloom high in the foliage. Too many. Too coordinated. This is a net, I said. They've planned our responses. Tessa crawled up beside me behind a ditch line. We need to get Kadir out. Agreed, I said. But first we need to open a lane. Rafi's voice came through, strained. Comms are degrading, jamming. Drone feed is glitching. Of course it was. They weren't just attacking metal and flesh. They were attacking awareness. Holt barked orders. The infantry formed a perimeter, returning fire. The rear truck tried to reverse, but another explosive cut the road behind us. The convoy was sealed. In the chaos, I saw the thing that changed everything. A figure on the far ridge, steady, calm, using a laser designator. Not to hit us now. To mark us. To time something. A second ambush element? Airstrike? Mortars? I didn't have the luxury of guessing. Tessa, I said. With me. We flank right. Take the ridge. Rafi, stay low and keep the jammer ID'd. Rafi replied, copy. We moved. Low. Fast, using the ditch line to conceal us. The jungle tried to snag my gear. I ignored it. You can't fight leaves and expect to win. Halfway to the ridge, something snapped under my boot. A wire, thin as hair. I froze. Too late. A flare shot upward from the undergrowth, hissing into the canopy, bathing the jungle in white light. And in that moment, every shooter in the enemy ring saw exactly where we were. Gunfire ripped toward us. We dove behind a fallen tree. Bullets chewed bark into splinters. Tessa shouted, Miles, move. I pushed her first. Hard. She tumbled behind a rock outcropping. A shot cracked, sharp, precise. Pain hit my side like a sledgehammer. Not a clean bullet wound. A tearing, burning slam that stole my breath. I looked down and saw blood soaking my vest near the ribs. Tessa crawled back toward me. You're hit. I'm fine. I lied, because that's what you say when fine is the only thing keeping the team moving. But my body didn't believe me. My hands trembled. Rafi's voice came through comms, broken by static. Hawk, 6, they're shifting right. More shooters coming. Holt yelled over the net. Hawk, 6, report. Where are you? I tried to answer. My radio crackled uselessly. The jammer spiked. The network died. In a war zone, silence is a cliff edge. Tessa pressed her hand to my wound. Her eyes were furious, not at me, but at the situation. We have to fall back, she said. Not yet, I rasped. That ridge, designator. We take it. We break their control. Tessa's jaw clenched. You can't even breathe right. I tried to stand. The world tilted. My legs refused. It wasn't bravery. It was physics. Tessa stared at me for a second, then made the decision I never would have wanted her to make. She grabbed my shoulder strap. Listen to me. I'm going to draw them off. You stay hidden. When it clears, you move back to the convoy. No, I said, weak and desperate. Don't. You're not dying here, she snapped. And I'm not letting the whole convoy die because you're stubborn. She looked me in the eyes, voice lowering. You taught me one thing, Keegan. Finish the mission. This is how. Then she did something that still sits in my chest like a stone. She took my radio, my primary link to the team, and she ran. Not away, across, drawing fire, making noise, becoming a target so I wouldn't be one. I watched her disappear into foliage as bullets chased her path. I tried to crawl after her. My arms failed. The jungle spun. Then footsteps, close, heavy. Enemy voices, searching. I pressed into mud and held my breath until my ribs screamed. My world became inches. Wet earth, roots, insects crawling like the jungle didn't understand what dying meant. A man stepped over me. His boots splashed mud onto my sleeve. He paused. Then he moved on. I didn't exhale until I heard nothing. When I finally forced myself forward, it was late afternoon. The firefight had faded into distance. The convoy noise was gone. The jungle was alive again, like it had never held a massacre. I reached the road, slow, shaking. The convoy was gone. No trucks, no bodies, no civilians, no wounded. Just burnt marks on dirt and a smear of blood that could have been anyone's. My radio was gone. My team was gone. And in the absence of answers, the worst one formed. They had pulled out. They had assumed me dead. They had moved to save who they could. That is what commanders do. They count the living. They bury the missing. Night fell like a lid. I was alone in the jungle with a wound that throbbed like a heartbeat and an enemy force that had just proven it could predict us. I had one remaining asset, a compact burst transmitter in my kit, meant for emergency satellite pings. It could send one short message if I reached high ground with clear sky. But I didn't climb toward high ground. I crawled toward the enemy's likely exit route. Because if the convoy was gone, then the most important question wasn't, where are my people? It was, where did they take Kadir? I followed tracks in mud, tire marks, boot prints, drag marks from a damaged vehicle. The jungle hid evidence quickly, but panic leaves patterns. So does discipline. After 2 hours, I found a dropped strip of cloth, medical gauze, stained with antiseptic. Our kind. They had casualties. They weren't walking out clean. Then I found something worse. A small plastic tag from Kadir's child's backpack. Bright blue. Innocent. I held it until my knuckles went white. They had the family. They had the engineer. And if they reached the hydro gates, the valley would become a hostage. I moved through the night like a man who didn't own his own life anymore. At dawn, I reached a ridge and saw smoke in the distance. An old plantation compound turned into a temporary base, surrounded by makeshift fencing and watchtowers. Vehicles parked in rows. A radio mast. And near the main building, a group of civilians pushed into a corner, guarded. One small child sat on the ground, arms around knees. Kadir's child. My chest tightened with a fierce, quiet rage. Then I saw the soldiers. Not all cinder front. Some wore mixed gear, professional kit, clean lines, foreign optics. Contractors. The kind of people who didn't wave flags. They just solved problems for whoever paid. This wasn't a local militia operation. This was a handoff. And the timeline was short. If they transferred Kadir, he'd be disappeared. The valley would be leveraged. People would die quietly while someone negotiated with water. I needed my team. I needed Holt. I needed anyone. I climbed higher, found a bare rock face, and activated the burst transmitter. 5 seconds. That's all you got. I typed with shaking hands. Hawk, 6 alive. Convoy captured. Kadir held at Plantation Compound Grid 17. Need immediate intercept. Leak confirmed. Transmit. The device blinked. Then went dark. Message sent. Now I had to survive long enough for it to matter. I set eyes on the compound and began to plan like a man who had nothing left to lose but refused to waste it. I watched guard rotations, counted steps, mapped blind spots, noted the radio mast, likely their comms lifeline, and I noticed something that made my blood run colder than my wound. A figure walking the compound perimeter, a familiar silhouette. A man with a confident gait and a habit of touching his earpiece when he thought. Captain Aaron Holt. Alive. Inside the compound. Not tied up. Not guarded. Walking freely. For a second my mind refused the conclusion. Maybe he'd been captured and forced to cooperate. Then Holt laughed at something a contractor said. Relaxed. Comfortable. A traitor doesn't always look like a villain. Sometimes he looks like a man relieved that his choices finally paid off. The leak wasn't abstract. It was personal. Holt had sold the convoy. He had sold civilians. He had sold us. I felt my hands tremble, not from fear, but from the pressure of deciding what justice looked like. Because the story wasn't, I was left behind and I got revenge. The story was, I was left behind and I came back to save the people who didn't save me. And Holt was one of them. That was the cruelest twist of all. Near midday, movement at the compound increased. Vehicles started engines. The contractors checked gear. The civilians were forced to stand. Transfer time. I could not stop it alone, but I could slow it. I waited for Holt to step near the radio mast. He did, checking a handheld. I aimed my rifle, scope steady, breathing controlled. I didn't shoot Holt. I shot the mast stabilizing bracket. Metal screamed. The mast collapsed sideways, snapping cables. Radios erupted in static. Men shouted. Vehicles paused. Confusion rippled. In confusion, discipline breaks. And when discipline breaks, openings appear. I moved. Fast. Low, toward the civilian corner. A guard stepped into my path, startled, rifle rising. I struck him with the butt of my weapon and pulled him down behind crates. No shots, no alarms. I reached the civilians. Dr. Kadir's eyes widened. He recognized my uniform, but then his gaze flicked over my torn vest, my blood, my dirt. "You're alone," he whispered. "For now," I said. "When I move you, you do exactly what I say." His wife clutched the child tighter. I glanced at the compound center and saw Holt shouting at his people, furious. He was trying to restore order. Then his gaze shifted. He looked out toward the jungle ridge, toward me, and for a second, his face changed. Not guilt, fear, because he realized the one variable he'd written off was still alive. He raised his radio, yelling. I couldn't hear his words, but I read his mouth. "Find him." The jungle answered with movement, guards fanning outward. I had seconds. I leaned to Kadir. "When I cut the fence, you run to that ditch line. Stay low. Don't stop." He nodded, trembling. I cut the wire with my tool, opened a narrow gap. Then I threw a smoke canister into the compound center. White smoke bloomed. Shouts rose. I pulled the civilians through the gap. We moved in a crouched line toward the ditch. Shots cracked, not aimed, panicked. The child cried once. Then the mother covered his mouth gently, whispering something soothing. We reached the ditch line. Then a voice behind us, close, sharp. "Miles." "Holt." I turned slowly, rifle raised. Holt stood 10 meters away, weapon trained, eyes hard. "You should have stayed dead," he said. I didn't answer. My chest rose and fell with controlled pain. He smiled thinly. "You have no idea what you're interfering with." "You sold civilians," I said. "You sold your people." He shrugged like it was arithmetic. "I made a deal. It was bigger than you." "Bigger than the kids?" I asked. Holt's gaze flicked toward Kadir's family. For a moment, something like hesitation flashed. Then it vanished. He tightened on the trigger, and that's when the jungle gave me the last twist. A shot cracked from the trees. Holt's rifle jerked, hit in the shoulder. He stumbled back, cursing. I spun my optic toward the origin. A figure emerged through foliage, limping, dirty, alive. Tessa Wynn. She was pale, exhausted, but her eyes were burning with the kind of fury that keeps you standing when your body has no business doing it. She'd survived. She'd tracked me. Or she'd tracked Holt. Maybe both. She moved beside me, weapon up. "You don't get to do this alone," she rasped. I swallowed hard. "I thought you." "Later," she snapped. "Move." Behind us, engines roared again. The compound was recovering. The contractors were regrouping. But my burst message had done its job. In the distance, faint at first, then louder, rotor blades. Friendly helicopters. And with them, the unmistakable pop of flashbangs and coordinated movement, a rescue element closing. Holt looked up at the sound, then back at us, and for the first time, he looked like a man realizing his game had ended. He raised his weapon again. Tessa and I fired. Not lethal shots, controlled. His weapon flew from his hands. He fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder, breathing hard. "You were going to let them take water," I said, voice low. "You were going to let the valley die quietly." Holt's eyes were wild. "You don't understand." "Maybe not," I said. "But I understand this. You betrayed your own." The rescue team arrived like a storm, fast, precise. Civilians were pulled to safety. Contractors were detained. The compound was secured. Holt was cuffed and dragged away, shouting until someone slammed him into silence. When the helicopters lifted off with Kadir and his family aboard, the child looked out the open door at the jungle below like he was trying to understand how close death had been. I sat on the floor of the aircraft, blood drying on my vest, shaking now that my body was allowed to. Tessa sat beside me, breathing hard. "You're alive," I whispered. She let out a rough laugh. "Barely." I looked at her, and something in my chest cracked. Not pain, not relief, but pride mixed with sorrow. "You saved me," I said. She stared forward, eyes glossy. "You saved them." even after they left you. I closed my eyes, thinking of the report that had declared me dead, thinking of the truth behind it. They hadn't abandoned me out of cruelty. They'd abandoned me out of necessity. But Holt had used that necessity like a weapon. Now justice had a name again. Back at base, they tried to apologize in ways that sounded like bureaucracy. Mercer, another Mercer, not Holt, stood in a briefing room and cleared his throat. "We made a call," he said. "We thought you were gone." "I know," I answered. He hesitated. "You still came back." I didn't respond immediately, because the answer wasn't about courage. It was about pride. It was about the kind of soldier you decide to be when no one is watching. "People needed help," I said finally. "That's the job." Later, alone in my bunk, I held the small blue tag from Kadir's child's backpack. A simple piece of plastic. Proof that the mission was never about medals or revenge. It was about preventing a quiet tragedy. The next day, my name was corrected in the system. Not Kia. Active. Alive. But the jungle had left a mark that wouldn't show on any medical report. The understanding that respect isn't about who saves you. Respect is about who saves others, especially when they don't have to. And somewhere out there, in corridors like Rave Lynn, another convoy would roll into fog, believing the world was predictable. It isn't. But if they were lucky, someone unseen would still be out there, listening, watching, ready to return when it mattered most. Because that's what the ones left behind do. They come back. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Epic Recon Stories. Here we tell the missions that never made the headlines, the decisions made in silence, and the people who carried them. More stories are coming soon.